I tried to do that on my own and realized very, very quickly that I was going nowhere fast. The job searches were pretty much leading me. I was very overwhelmed and I'm very scattered throughout my searches, not really knowing where to focus or how to focus.
This is the Happen to Your Career podcast with Scott Anthony Barlow.
We help you stop doing work that doesn't fit you, figure out what does, and make it happen.
We help you define the work that is unapologetically you and then go get it.
If you feel like you were meant for more and you're ready to make a change, keep listening.
Here's Scott.
Here's Scott.
Here's Scott.
Over the years, we've shown you a lot of career changes that most people would consider impossible. We know from being on the inside of these that it can be really challenging to think about how on earth someone would make this career change from one drastically different occupation to another, or how they might go and get what most people would consider to be a impossible dream job, and many, many other things between. So that's one of the reasons why we take great pains to show you how it works from the inside. For example, how does someone go from identifying a list of organizations that they might want to work for and getting an opportunity with their number one company on that list?
I was able to properly position myself and focus myself like in this career transition. And that's the key that had been missing this entire time. I didn't know how to position myself. I didn't know how to focus, and I didn't really know what I wanted at the base.
That's Tanya Malcolm Ravel. Tanya's story is super interesting because she was trying to find her ideal opportunity in a completely different country. She's from the US, but her husband and her were relocating to London. The way she found her opportunity is even more interesting, especially since she ended up working with her number one organization that she had said, hey, this is where I want to work. So listen close throughout this conversation as she shares exactly how she did it. Here she is telling about where her career started.
Well, it started in New York City in television production. So I really cut my teeth in the MTV music television arena and was in there, for about 12, 13 years on and off exploring within television production, and then jumping in and out to different facets of the music television arena. So I was, like I said, a TV producer, but I also did experiential marketing around events, and I worked on festivals. And until very recently, I was working as a tour manager for pretty big bands. And like I said, I'd done this for years and years and years. And the overwhelming process throughout every new job that I would take was, I really don't like this. I really don't like something in my job because it's not fulfilling. But it's not necessarily the work itself, although I'm sure there are bits and pieces that drive me nuts. But it's not that particularly. It's a bigger umbrella, and I can't quite put my finger on what the heck it is. But, there's a new job and it's right in front of me. So I'll go ahead and grab that one anyway. And that's been pretty much my story year over year. The available job, and not really diving in deeply into why am I having these thoughts? Why is this job career not really fulfilling? So my journey started, you heard what I was saying about not being fulfilled about my position, but my day really started, the transition really happened when my husband and I decided to move outside of the United States and come over to the United Kingdom. And I was ecstatic for many reasons. But in terms of my career, I thought this would be a great opportunity to just not reinvent myself, but maybe just do that, reinvent myself, look at what I've been doing and start from scratch, which sounds all well and good. And ideally that would have happened and I would have gotten a job the next month or day or whatever.
24 hours later, at least. We've arrived. Okay, where's it at?
Unfortunately, after a little bit of a longer ordeal getting a work visa, the spouse work visa, I just got sat down and said, I refuse to fall into my old ways. I really need to think about what I want to get out of my next position. I'm in a great place to do that right now. There's no overwhelming monetary need for me to jump into something, as I felt that years and years living in New York City. It's just all about the next job and who knows you. So I felt like just slow down and really evaluate where I was at. And I tried to do that on my own and realized very, very quickly that I was going nowhere fast. The job searches were pretty much leading me. I was very overwhelmed and I'm very scattered throughout my searches, not really knowing where to focus or how to focus. So getting more and more frustrated throughout the entire process. And then, of course, as I'm looking at the calendar, all of a sudden, a week has gone by, 2 weeks have gone by, and now then a month, and then 2 months, 3 months. And I was getting very bummed out, to say the least. And then I think I went online and I just said, I need to find a podcast about career transitions and finding a job. And I stumbled across your interview on Mac's List. And I swear I listened to you and that happened to your career boot camp and you were talking about it. And I said, oh my God, that's me. This is what I need. I need guidance. I need a voice who can help me get to the bottom of what I truly need to get, not just for myself, but just that great work-life balance for myself, my husband, my career, etc. And I went online and I think we were talking within the next couple of hours. I called you or emailed you right away. And voila, I was inundated with the Happen to Your Career process. And I have to say, Scott, it's funny. I was talking to my husband and I said, this is the first time where I feel like I have found someone and something that is going to make me focus and give me purpose. But I feel like my purpose is about to explode everywhere. And having gone through a couple different conversations with you, I jumped into the boot camp and the rest is history, so to speak, in the sense that ultimately, and I'll give you the abbreviated version and then dive in a little bit more deeply, but ultimately putting in the work and the effort throughout the boot camp, really paying attention to myself and my thoughts and like kind of my gut as well, what worked, what didn't work throughout my career, what I was looking for, what my wants were, what my motivations were, my minimums, my ideals, etc. And just putting this all down on paper, I realized it's not rocket science. At the end of the day, this is me. But what it did for me is it helped to put me into perspective. It helped me to really think about myself in a different light by evaluating like my skills, my beliefs, my needs and my wants. I mean, it was almost like I was able to see myself through a bigger lens. And then in turn, now I was able to properly position myself and focus myself like in this career transition. And that's the key that had been missing this entire time. I didn't know how to position myself. I didn't know how to focus, and I didn't really know what I wanted at the base. So going through everything, coming out of it at the back end with this great, like my career profile, and it's there and it's what I want, what I need. And then focusing my search on companies based upon that shared my belief system, that had the values that I was looking for. I targeted Wanderlust, and I think it was one of the first companies that came out of my mouth once, as soon as I had this great profile, and I was like, I want to work for Wanderlust.
Really? That's pretty cool.
Absolutely. I mean, I had a couple of other places on my list, as you should.
Yeah.
That was always key and number one. So yeah, and then I just did everything that you guys basically coached us to do, the reach outs, massaging your network to see who knows who and reaching out to them and seeing if you get introductions and being very bold and forward, which is part of what I do in my job. But in terms of a job search, I was very hesitant to do.
It's outside your normal conventional operating area.
And that was the other piece. So it's like, okay, look, you want something this desperately or this badly, then why wouldn't you work outside of your normal operating levels or your normal conventions? What's the worst that they can say? But that's better than no answer whatsoever that you wouldn't have gotten in the first place. So I did all of that. And I got into one of the co-founders of the festival. I got directly to him. And he in turn then obviously responded to my email. And then because I'm now in the UK, he shot me through to that arm that deals with all of the branding outside of the United States. So then, of course, then bigger conversations started there with that entity. And it was a little bit of a painful process just because they weren't quite ready to have the deeper conversations, although they did recognize that I would be a good fit. It was one of those things and you've mentioned this, it's not necessarily what they can do for you right then and there. It's about establishing a relationship and keeping that relationship going so that when there is an opportunity, you're the first person they're going to think of. And Scott, that's exactly what I did.
No, this is so wonderful because I'm not surprised by it anymore. I don't think that's the right word, but I'm always amazed at how when you define what it is that you want, when you know what you want, and then when you take action or ask for what you want or go after what it is that you want, very often
it manifests itself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It is just a really interesting phenomenon that I observe all the time. In my life, I've observed in a lot of the lives of our students. Clearly, this has happened for you. And just like you said, the other really interesting part of that is 100% of the time, or I should say nearly 100% of the time, what we want is outside the realm of what we've done before, which means that by definition, it's outside our normal comfort zones or normal operation zones or anything else, which also by definition makes it uncomfortable. So it's kudos to you for moving through that because that's not an easy thing to do at all.
It wasn't. But, Scott, at the end of the day, if you want something and you're determined to make a change in your life and in your career, I could not go another day saying, oh, I'm not happy, or I don't like my job, or I wish I didn't have to go to work today. I was over that. And I've spent way too much time thinking of the negative. So there was only one thing for me to do, and that was focus on me and the positive and the future. I couldn't dwell on the past anymore. And it wasn't beneficial for me, nor was it beneficial for my job hunt. So I still am flabbergasted that the conversations went very, very well with Wanderlust, but I'm still flabbergasted that they said, hey, by the way, the London events are starting up and we'd like for you to lead the charge on it. Are you available to start tomorrow? So, yeah, it was exactly like you had kind of presented it, in the sense that the hard work, the dedication, having your career profile or dialing that far down into your wants, your needs, your beliefs, et cetera, like I had mentioned, and coming up with that, you can only find something that is going to speak to you and represent who you are, because that's what you're focusing on. And that's where your career search is going towards. So at the end of the day, whatever presents itself is going to be a positive outcome for you, no matter what. And that has been the biggest revelation for me. I will never go out for a job just because it's presented itself on some random LinkedIn job blast and it sounds good, other than me focusing on companies that I know that I will be appreciated in. I know that I will be able to grow in. I know that I will be able to work in some sort of collaborative environment. A big piece for me, that having a flexible work schedule. I really don't like taking the tube during rush hour. I don't know too many people who do.
Yeah, I know.
But having this schedule where I could flex my hours and work from home when I wanted to, and also go into an office if I wanted to. And they are 100% on board with that, which I did a couple of fist pumps in the air when I heard that. But more importantly, working with people whose values really align with me and mine. So yeah, I got all that. I got everything I wanted. That's the craziest part. Everything. Not one, not two, not 2.5, like everything.
It feels crazy right now, but I think the cool part is that now that you've done that, you realize that that is something that you can build for yourself every single time that you want to make a switch, or I don't know, if something changes in your life in which you need something different and you have to make a change for one reason or another because something no longer aligns, then you now have the tools and the experience to know that that's totally possible for yourself, which is super cool.
Absolutely. And I have the tools to be able to pivot. I mean, it's called a career pivot for a reason, right? And I feel more confident in being able to shift left to right, front or back, whatever, but knowing that I'm going to move forward in a direction that aligns with me. And again, I've never had that before. I've never had that feeling behind me.
What do you feel like were some of the key either events or things that had to happen in order for you to be ready to make this type of change and look at it in a different way? As you look back, what were some of those for you? And I think it's a little bit different for everybody. But
yeah, absolutely. I think 100%. Like phase one was figure out what the heck I wanted to get out of my career, what I wanted to get out of this next phase in my life. And I think everybody has to do that before they can be successful in anything, period. I mean, you can go through life, you can go through your jobs and be successful, but to truly get every drop out of the experience and more positive, obviously, than negative, you've got to figure out what makes you tick and what's going to keep you going 100%.
Well, let me ask you even a little bit before that. What caused you to get frustrated enough to the point where you wanting to do it differently than you had done it before? I know that you had mentioned, hey, there was this move to London and it seems like the opportune time, and certainly timing had happened. But I know plenty of people that have made a move abroad or moved to a different country. I've interacted with those people over email that aren't to the point and level where they're necessarily going to take action.
Got it. Absolutely. Well, as I mentioned, I was working in television production and entertainment. And what I didn't mention is I was living in Los Angeles prior to moving to the UK. So being inundated in the entertainment arena, again, it was a great stepping stone. It's gotten me to where I'm at today. But what it really quickly does is it frustrates you by the amount of ego that needs to be managed in throughout, if it's artists, producers, etc. The one thing that through my search, my profile, I've really understood that I'm very good at being that person that can morph myself into different situations. So I'm very good at flexing and being supportive of others.
Yeah.
And I was doing that more to an extent where it was more detrimental to me and my career health.
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I was giving out more to others than I was getting back. So, and okay, great. This is me choosing to do this, but the consistency of doing that year over year and feeling like, while yes, I was progressing in my career in terms of title, I wasn't getting anything back in terms of support or just, if it was just a little kudos, hey, by the way, great job. Just nothing in that regard. And it didn't make me feel good at the end of the day. While yes, the event, the project, the festival, the concert was a success, I was still kind of at we can say 1 to 10. I was always at a 5 in terms of what I would get out of it. So I was absolutely frustrated with that. And every job, even moved through different arenas from television production to festivals, thinking, okay, maybe something new and different will happen here. At the base, I really did like a lot of the work that I was doing. It was just this overarching piece that I thought I could change up. And unfortunately, it wasn't working, at least in that entertainment festival TV arena. So with the move, I knew I wanted to put a stop to that cycle, and that I wanted to get a lot more out of myself and out of what I was doing for others. And I wanted to be more empowering to a community, but also something that I could feel proud of and say, hey, Mom, Dad, take a look at what I just produced, instead of some random show on MTV. So that was the impetus behind me really starting the journey. London was the conduit, and Happen to Your Career was the platform. So, yeah.
I love that. I'm going to borrow that.
Feel free.
Except for it might change from London.
No,
I don't know.
Absolutely. No, but that's my story on the front end into a nutshell. And then other things, just in terms of what else had to happen to make this happen, was very quickly, I've always been into yoga. I've always been into health and wellness. I haven't been the woo, 24/7 type of person.
Yeah.
But it's always been very integral in my life. No matter where I've been, if I've been on the road, I would always take out time to go to the gym, maybe take a yoga class, go to the Y, walk around the park or whatever, have a good meal. So that's always been a foundation of who I am. So, which was great, but I didn't have the network here in London. So the other part is I really had to establish a network and put my face out there, take those leaps that didn't feel comfortable, and maybe present myself at an event where I knew nobody, and with business cards and a handshake, just make people know me. Like, just, I'm here yet again. And I did that, and did with a couple of key influencers in the health and wellness market. And it just resonated. So I put myself in front of yoga studios and actually said, hey, by the way, if there's an opportunity, I'd love to volunteer and help out. And once a week, or if it's event-based, I am here. And I actually got signed on with one of the largest yoga studios here in London.
Really?
And funnily enough, this is a little secret, but funnily enough, we're going to try to see if we can get them on board at Wanderlust because it's such a great studio and I have all the contacts now.
Hold on. This is something that is really interesting that happens with nearly everybody that goes through this process and it's so fascinating to me. You go through and I'm going to call it just doing the work. You're putting in the reps, for lack of a better phrase, and inevitably you start to build relationships.
Absolutely.
And then as you build those relationships, you don't know where or when necessarily, but those actually end up becoming useful or mutually beneficial for
like 1 degree separation.
Yeah, exactly. For a variety of different reasons, not necessarily just transactional, it's going to get me to my next job or whatever it happens to be. But this is super, super, super cool.
Yeah.
So now you not only got to know these people, and it sounds like people that you were really interested in knowing anyway, based on the work that you had done and said, hey, this is kind of where my values and interests and everything else fall. But then now it sounds like you're getting to work with them continuously or possibly, right?
Absolutely. And you're right. The people that I have met just by doing that, the world is large until it's not, and the health and wellness industry in the UK is booming, but it's still, compared to the US, it's still fledgling. So the people who shine and actually take an active part and participate, you will see them over and over again, or maybe you recognize another person at the next event. So having the touch points with the yoga studios, having the touch points with the gyms, having the touch points with the great health platform aggregator that just kind of brings in the health wellness news and not regurgitates, but brings it in a nice condensed package to the consumers. And they also have events. I would go to their events where you would meet influencers in the health and wellness arena, whether it's clothing lines or food products, et cetera. So just a bunch of different POVs in this arena. Then afterwards, you'd get to meet them, cards are exchanged, and so forth and so on. And that's just what I was doing. And I kept building and building and building. So much so that with Wanderlust, a big part of any event is the ties into the community and obviously for the consumer draw, but also what can we present to the consumer that they're going to like and appreciate. So having gone to all of these wellness industry events where they've presented the new and upcoming trendy thing or what's resonating, yep. I already know all of this stuff. The research is done. Now we just have to go out and engage them. So I could not have made this up even if I tried. But yeah, no, really, I couldn't. But just staying on top of it, even when here in London, the rain, rainy day, didn't really feel like doing anything. I didn't really feel like going up to Soho to go to an event. But I just, what, Tanya, at the end of the day, what do you have to lose? And just did it. And every single time I've walked away saying, oh my gosh, I got this person's contact. I had a great time. I learned more about X, Y, and Z out of everything. And nothing has been too small or too big.
Let me ask you about a couple of different pieces of the process, for lack of a better phrase, like your journey, we'll call it that. You mentioned earlier, you had sent an email and connected with one of the main people for events.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious for people, we touched on it earlier, but I'm curious what you actually did in that particular case and why you feel that particular email, contact, etc., actually worked. What about it?
That's a great question. So it wasn't as simple as it wasn't as streamlined as that. What happened was I came out of, I forget what week it was in the boot camp, and I was like, Eureka! I know what I want. And I want to work for Wanderlust. And again, I just started looking at my network first and foremost to see if I had any ties with Wanderlust. And on the first level, I didn't think that I did. And I just started mentioning it to everybody. Again, I'm trying to manifest it, so I'm throwing it out there. And every person that I met, every person that I had worked with, I said, hey, by the way, I'm really interested in working with Wanderlust. Do you know anybody or have you been to one, et cetera, et cetera. So I actually landed on a coworker who she said, I don't know anybody directly at Wanderlust, but I think I know somebody who's good friends with one of the founders. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So based upon my relationship with this woman, which was fantastic, my coworker, she then introduced me to reached out. Yes, indeed, that this other woman had a relationship with the co-founder. And then in turn, based upon their relationship, introduced me on the weight and the strength of my work, my ethics, and just what I could bring to the party. So then this woman took it upon my friend's word that I'm badass and introduced me to the founder. Now, that was great. I've now got an email address. I have somebody who's setting this up. That was a big part. But what really sealed the deal, and this is something that Lisa and I had gone through, and you're sending these emails out to people and they're getting a crap ton of them day in, day out. You've got to differentiate yourself, one, but you also have to say, look, this isn't just about me trying to get something from you. I want to give something back to you as well, if possible. And it's an information exchange first and foremost. And I know I'm alone with you, but you need to know what that means. And I think the person help in this, your transition moving overseas. So more succinctly and more deeply than I've just kind of articulated it, I sent a really badass, excuse my French, email to Sean outlining all of this. And he said, yeah, you do seem like the best person. Let me introduce you over to the EMEA people, the people dealing with Europe, Middle East, and Asia.
Very cool.
And that's how that transpired. It was really cool. But I don't think he would have given me the time of day if the intros weren't as strong as they were from my friends, but B, in terms of the written communication from myself. If that had lacked or didn't really show my enthusiasm, then I'm one of many. As much as I'd like to think I'm amazing, which I am,
I agree.
On paper, that can fade and fizzle fast if you're not scintillating or you don't kind of let them know that you're really willing to be the brand or you're really into their brand.
Especially recently, a lot of research on how these types of connections are made and why they're so effective. And first of all, it's so interesting that most, not all, but most, like someplace in the range of 70 to 80% of these types of opportunities, these types of it's my dream job type opportunities are found based on interactions through weak ties.
Yes.
Yeah, meaning that it is not necessarily somebody in your immediate network, because if it's somebody you interact with all the time or somebody who you regularly see or regularly talk to or whatever else, then you're probably already aware of any people or opportunities that they know immediately. However, it's usually in the less strong ties and less strong relationships where you begin to find those type of things that aren't known to you when you're seeking it out. In this case, it was a former coworker who, and
absolutely.
People underestimate, I did for many years, underestimated the weight that is carried behind a strong recommendation and some of the psychological reasons that trust and credibility are already there when you have that initial weight behind it for somebody that you know and like already. And it adds like 150-pound weight to whatever force you're already carrying. So your really awesome written communication that you had sent off was, I don't know, it's like parachute or something along those lines, or sailboat or something like that. And all of a sudden you get this huge gust of wind behind it and now you're cruising. Struggling for an analogy, but we'll work on that.
No, I 100% agree. And again, it was just articulating. It's like, look, I am looking for a job in this company or with this type of company or with this particular company in general. Do you know anybody, or just keep me in mind? And again, that was my mantra.
Yeah, this is so amazing for so many different reasons. I'm really curious because we've got so many people that listen to the show that are in the place that you were not that long ago, where
I was that person listening to the show.
Yeah, exactly.
In the same position. Absolutely.
Yeah, you've been in the cycle and you're there and you're frustrated and you're not entirely sure what to do differently. But what advice would you give that person who's in that place? Don't
let the hard days or the days where you don't think you're moving forward or that nothing's happening stop you or slow you down. I think that for me was the really, really, really tough part when I didn't see the end of the rainbow, the end in sight. I couldn't necessarily get that particular connection that I wanted, or I already gotten some sort of negative feedback or no feedback. Don't let that stop you. If anything, you should double down on your efforts. And I know it's harder to do than say, but you know what? Caffeine and chocolate will get you through it. Just do it. You've got to do it. Because I worked so hard that when this happened, it felt so friggin' sweet, that much sweeter. And I would have been happy no matter what. But knowing that I made this happen, it wasn't somebody coming to me. It wasn't me trying to throw my resume into a random lotto of 100 million other people for the same job. This was me networking. This was me keeping my relationships. This was me top of relationships. Me just kind of sticking with it even when I wasn't getting a response on an email or a phone call. I was just calling back and making sure that they knew who I was. So stay strong, kick ass, and just remember that you are who you are and you bring a lot to the table.
Absolutely love it. Hey, if you love this story where we talk through and walk you through step by step how someone got to more meaningful work, then you'll absolutely love our audiobook, Happen to Your Career, An Unconventional Approach to Career Change and Meaningful Work. I even got to narrate it, which was so fun and something that I really enjoy doing and will definitely do for future books as well. But it also contains firsthand accounts from career changers on how they made the move to more meaningful work, just like we include on the podcast here. And actually, it's been called the best audiobook experience ever by some reviewers. You can find those reviews and the book itself on Audible, Amazon, or any other place where books are sold. Seriously, just pause this right now and go over to Amazon or Audible or wherever you want and download it. You can be reading it and start it on your career change in literally seconds. Now, here's a sneak peek into what's coming up next week, right here on Happen to Your Career.
That aspect of loving what you're doing is so critical. I'm not saying something that is actually false, which is just follow your passion and the money will follow. That's not true. But what is true is that if you're doing something that you love and is fun, it's more likely that it will happen.
Is there any particular subject or area that people tend to come to you for? Maybe you're great at creating travel itineraries, or maybe everybody comes to you when they have a problem and need to talk about it. So you don't even have an answer on this right away. But as you're listening to this episode, thinking on this can actually be really helpful as a way to begin figuring out how to do work that you enjoy. In fact, Happen to Your Career turned 10 years old this year, and this is exactly how I started our company. All that and plenty more next week right here on Happen to Your Career. Make sure that you don't miss it. And if you haven't already, click subscribe on your podcast player so that you can download this podcast in your sleep and you get it automatically, even the bonus episodes every single week, sometimes multiple times a week. Until next week, adios. I'm out.